So we're doing Amar Hashem. I'm just going to run through it briefly. The two main questions where he begins, we'll go I'll say them more or less. The two main questions which he starts off with is how do you have a chibur of oiris, which are hafachim, and the second subject is how do you have the chibur of oir and kli. And in the end he explains the way to understand how oiris and kelim are mischaber is al derech, the way it's explained how the two oiris hafachim are mischaber, what we call Eisa Shalom Bimreimov. So first let's understand what is the question, what's the problem. He sort of answers the question himself, but he still has a problem. What's the question? How can you have two hafachim together? How can they be mischaber together? And then he says, although we already learned that the keli is sevel all hafachim, we learned before about the moichin rechavim, that he can take all hafachim together. Still the question is, but how the oiris mischaber? What's the question? We just answered it. The reason is the kelim are able to be mechaber all the hafachim.
So it means the kli we only have to do with the word, no?
Right. So what's the problem? If the kli can do it, so they're all happily together in the same keli. The keli is mechaber, all of them together. If the keli can be sevel, what's the question when I get to oil? Obviously, the question is when I get to oil. We understand the keli can be like what's the mashla he had? Meichin rechavim. A child can't take two opposites, and a person who's meichin the gadlus can. He takes it all together. Okay, fine. So what's the problem? So they can stand together in his head. So the keli is mechaber the two things. What's the big deal? Well, obviously, I'm going to have to say the big deal is because an oil has a teichen to it. It has an inyan. It's not just an inyan of savlonis. Savlonis means that the oiris can be there, but you're not being mechaber them necessarily. But here the question is when you get to the oil. The oil is a bal teichen. Is a gilui. So if you have a shitta, if your oil is a shitta of chesed, and somebody else has a shitta, the opposite of gvura, you don't get along with him. That's when they get to what the kash is, the shaila. Then the next question is how does oil come together with kli? Now here it comes a bit interesting because he didn't say it in the first maamar, but here he says of interesting lashon. He says it's not ba'oinus, not b'derech oinus. You can't say that the oil comes down b'derech oinus or k'moi ha'eish hagashmi, which is what we discussed last time. The eish hagashmi is there, but that's how nature happens. That the eish, which has eitzim, has to be together. The eish is not going to go until you finish burning the psila or the woods, right? So it's ba'oinus. Mashein ki l'mayla, it's b'derech hechrech. So it's a shtickle shayla. I mean, didn't we say also by the neshama and guf? By the way, is he talking about neshama and guf over here or just about oiris and kelim? He doesn't seem to mention neshama and guf over here. But the klolim will go the same way. Neshama and guf, oiris and kelim. What's the proof of that is at the end of Sif Vov, Itaka says, when he's finished dealing with the whole inyan of Chibah Ha'eres V'Kelim, he has a brackets at the end, which he says about the Neshama and the Guf, Lasid Lovely. So here's clear that Neshama and Guf, Ha'eres and Kelim is the same thing. There's a bigger raya that's the same thing. There's one of the Chidushim, the Rebbe's Masbi in the Maamar in Chelik Heim. Look at Chelik Heim, there's a Maamar, Macha Chodesh. And there the Rebbe says something very interesting. Oh, we'll get to that actually later because we won't understand right at this moment. First, let's go ala seder. So, the neshama of the guf. How does the neshama come into guf? How did we explain last time how the neshama comes into the guf? We said it was koyach hamafli. It's a koyach elyon, man de nofach. This is the man which is nofach. So it's a koyach hashlishi, shlishi hamadaber, the koyach ha'atzmus, which is mechaber the neshama guf. That sounds like an einus, no?
It's la'achri habira, yeah.
Huh?
La'achri habira, the neshama, yeah, wants to be the.
Okay, so the achra habira, I understand. Once he's had it.
That's what it says over here. No?
Right, but I'm talking about before. How did he get to the guf to begin with? What's that? Is from?
The man the nafa.
No. It doesn't say that. It says that there's a man denofa. He says man denofa who begins to himself shalamayla michachma, and that is machriach, which is mechaber the nefesh and the guf. He's mechaber the nefesh and guf, and he calls it the shlishi ha-mechaber.
Yeah, if you want to say it's similar to Eis Mikalim, so similar to the Eir. It's a Mikali because of the Sheish HaKeli, so you could say that the guf is Sheish, it's for the man Nafach, and that's what Neshav.
I'm trying to see the difference. In the first mimer, it sounds like there's a neshama and a guf, and there's a shlishi ha-mechaber, the koyach ha-mafli, which is mechaber neshama and guf. That sounds like it's ba'oinus. They have no choice in the matter. It's nafach, and this neshama has to come down in the guf. So it sounds like it's blakilu ba'oinus. Now here there's a whole deal about how he's mechaber the neshama. How does it come down to the guf? How does the oil come to the kli? There's a whole system how it works. The oil knows the mile of the sheresh hakli, and therefore he wants to come down to the sheresh hakli. So it sounds like it's, and he explains it's baratzen. It's baratzen. He says every hashpah, ein shum hashpah, yef sheli shum hashpah b'lei simcha. That means there's an interest in the oil to come down, and that goes away the whole sivov to explain this reason that the oil wants to come down to the kli. So is it baratzen of the oil, or is it a koyach elyon which is mechaber? That's what I'm asking. Sounds like it's not consistent over here. The first time we said, why does the neshama come to the guf? The neshama wants to go up, has teva ha'aliyah, and what brings him down to the guf? There's man denofach, koyach hashlishi, koyach hamafli. That's what's mechaber the neshama guf. Here he seems to say, no, there's a whole reason why he has an interest in it. There's a mile in the guf, and etc. So is it mitzad koyach hashlishi, koyach hamafli, or is it mitzad the nefesh wants to come into the guf?
You say later that hot guf, that it wants to come to the guf, is because of the sheish of the
Right, so it's mitzad he wants to. So is that
but it's because of the Indian alien.
the sheirish of the guf gives him the rotzen to want to come down? But what's mechaber him with the guf is a koyach elyon. That's in the terrace of the question. What I'm asking, the rotzen of the neshama to come down into the guf. In other words, my question is, why doesn't he mention the kosav hashlishi, the koyach hashlishi, in this mimer? Because actually he's not talking about neshama of guf at the moment, although it's the same thing. The reason why neshama wants to come down into the guf is what he's going to explain in Sivov. There's the mile of the guf. But what's mechaber them? Sof kol sof, lemaila, oiris and kalim have epsashaychus. They're both a lakus. This is this type of elikus, this is that type of elikus. Do you need dafka koyach elyon? It doesn't say anywhere that you need a koyach elyon to do mechaber oiris and kalim. Maybe it does, but I'm not aware of such a place. But here you're talking about an neshama and a guf. An neshama is chelak alakar, and a guf is offer min adam, which is gashmis. Ruchnis and gashmis, you need a koyach which is mechaber. Ruchnis and gashmis.
Even in this mimer guf, where it says what the marker of guf is, it says that guf is yashma'ayim, so it's also from the koyach aliki.
He answered that question. That it's not nika. It's nivdal.
Yeah, but it's not a real data recha. It's just not nika to the nivdal.
I'm not sure what you're saying. So if the guf is mush, so therefore we still need a koyach to be mechaber the neshama and the guf. What's the koyach to be mechaber the neshama and the guf? Koyach hamafli. Which that koyach it doesn't seem you need in oiris and kalim.
Is it still Balkarch?
Huh?
Is it still Balkarch?
Can't hear you.
Is it still Balkarch?
So the reason why it's called Bar Kochoch is because even if he has a cheshik and a rotzen to come down, it's not his muhus. But I wasn't discussing. I was asking what happened to the koyach hamafli. Why isn't he mentioned over here? Because here we're not necessarily talking about neshama and guf. We're talking lacholoresh. We're talking about oiris and kalim. In the end, it comes out to be the same in neshama and guf. So he doesn't mention that. He already mentioned it earlier. He doesn't have to mention it every time. The koyach to be mechaber ruchnis and gashmis v'koyach ha'atzmas v'koyach hamafli lases. That's the koyach ha'mechaber. Now, what we're discussing is what makes the cheshik in the oil to want to come down. What gives him the simcha and the ratzon to come down? For that, you have to be masbid to the oil somehow that it's worth his while to come down, even if it's a big girida. So, and that goes away the next page to explain what the reason is. So, Allah Seder. So that's just dealing with that point. Why he doesn't have to mention about the koyach hamafli over here. Bichlal, you could take it a bit more berachvas if you want. That it's not just over here. This is a klal godel in Chassidus Bichlal. This inyan of two biurim in more or less the same thing. Hagam is not mamish the same thing, but what you have over here is you have a biur al pi seichel, al pi seder v'hadroga, and you have a biur which is not al pi seder v'hadroga. If you say, why is a neshama mischaber with a guf, you have to have two biurim. You have two biurim. You have a seder v'hadroga biur, a seichel that makes sense. What's to make sense? The neshama wants to come down to the guf because there's milas in the guf which you can't get up there. And then there's the koyach ha'atzmos, which is mechaber the two of them, which that doesn't make sense. It's just koyach ha'atzmos. It's like koyachel. You have this in many cases. This is something that you can sometimes get stuck on in front of the Maamar of the Rebbe. Sometimes you come to the question, so how does it happen? No, it's koyach ha'atzmos. If everything's koyach ha'atzmos, then that's a standard answer you can give to any question you have. How does this happen? Koyach ha'atzmos can manage anything, right? That's not an answer. You have to have a seder v'hadrogidik answer, and then in the end you ask the shayla, b'hol gufa, how is it possible? Here you have to come onto an akuda of koyach or atzmos or l'mayla me'ishtalshus or whatever the context is. The same thing over here. Let's give an example. How do you create yesh miyayin? Who creates yesh miyayin? Atzmos. No shayla. That's okay to simon chaf. That's the koyach to be mahava yesh miyayin. Is that the whole thing? Atzmos is mahava yesh miyayin, or there's a system? There's a whole system. There's a seder ishtalshlus, and there's a ha'ara and a ha'ara da ha'ara, and this ha'ara is an eye into the yesh, which is mislabish in the yesh. So what's being mahava? You're being miyachas the havas, the spheres hamalchus, a ha'ara of spheres hamalchus, or whatever sphere, whatever oilim you're up to, the malchus of the last oilim, malchus, the malchus dasir is mislabish in the nivra, and that's the keich ha'pel benifol. What happened to Atzmos? It's Atzmos the way he goes through the whole seder ishtalshlus until he actually. So there has to be a ishtalshlus, there has to be a seder ishtalshlus, and at the same time, there's a nakuda there which is not api seder ishtalshlus, or together with seder ishtalshlus, which is mitzad ha'atzmos. This you have, and the same thing over here. How is even a neshama in the guf? We're talking about how the neshama wants to come down to the guf. That's it. The neshama just comes down, lands inside the guf, and we're done. It says clearly that the neshama first is mislabish and the nefesh hasichlis. Nefesh hasichlis is mislabish and the nefesh bahamis. Nefesh bahamis is mislabish in the edim of the dam, and then hadam hu nefesh, and that's mislabish in the guf. So there's a system how it works, even in this hischabes of the neshama guf. It's not just a neshama straight into the geshem. It's mislabish in various nefashis until it comes to the most closest nefesh to guf, which is the nefesh bahamis, which that is mislabish in the dam, and then the dam is machai the guf. So there's a system and there's a lamailami system at the same time. The same thing over here. Why does the neshama want to come down in a guf? There's a whole system how it works. He has to be magish the sheirish aguf and whatever it is. But sof kol sof, who's mechabe him with a guf? This is the ruchnis and gashmis. Well, that's the koyach ha'atzmos. So it's a klal. You need to have seder v'adroga and you have to have koyach ha'atzmos. Anyway, when he brings the chibu of hafochim, he uses a mashal, famous mashal. The Alter Rebbe uses the same mashal in Tanya. Ois shalom b'mroimov. That you have sashal chesed, shashal mayim, and what's mechaber them? A koyach elyon, a gilui elyon, ha'ora shalamayim mishnehem, and that's mechaber. Then he says another mashal. What's the second mashal? Like two chachomim, which are misvachim, zeim zeh, and they come into machlekes gdoila. Sounds familiar. The machlekes gdoila b'nehem, until the mamish hema hafochim ke'eshu mayim. And when they come lifnei Rabban lishmoya, the svara of the Rav is then they hear such a svara and they nasa shonim v'ava b'hem at shipola b'men isvakchu. They're wondering what was the argument about. They don't understand what. So what are we arguing about? We're saying the same thing. You said it from this side, I said it from that side. It's the same thing. Do you see a difference between the two mishalim? Right. By the Malachim, they stay Eishu Mayim. We have a dogma for that. Makas Borod. It was Eishu Mayim. They made Shalom to do the Rotzen HaBayra to come down as Makas Borod. But they still stayed Eishu Mayim. If you touched the fire, it would be burning. And if you touched the ice, it would be cold. They didn't become a mixture. It's not like hot water and cold water becomes warm water. They stayed in their inyan, but they made Shalom Beineim. And that's the Lashon that he uses later on where is it now? On the next page. Yeah, page Reish Mem Vav, 2, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. When he finishes off, he says, Beis Oiris Hafachim Yishkenu Ze Im Ze. Yishkenu Ze Im Ze. That would be like the two Sorim, which Yishkenu Zeh and Zeh, they stand together in front of the king. They don't feel any opposition to the other guy. But as soon as they leave the presence of the king, each one is a Balabas in his town. He's a Sar Shul Chesed in his town, and the other guy holds they have to be a Sar Shul Gvura, and he behaves differently, and they don't agree with each other. It's only standing in front of the king, then it's battle. Masha'ein came by the two Chacham which come Lifnei Rabbon, and they hear Svara Nailis. How is the Chiba Beinehem? What type of Chiba would you say that is? Yipolim, what were they arguing about? In other words, there's an absolute yichud. There's no differences. So it seems, why do you have to add that on? This whole Maimah is a Maimah from the Alter Rebbe, Tavkuf Samar Beis. L'roika ha'oretz ha'amoyim, Tavkuf Samar Beis, and the brackets mainly are the Rebbe Rashab. So there's different nuschos of the Tavkuf Samar Beis, but it's hinted, if you want to see, in the Rebbe's Ha'ora earlier on, in page, where was it? When he was talking about the Chasdoi. Which page was that? Yes, page Reish Lamed Vov. You'll see the Rebbe's Metzayin to L'roika Tavkuf Samar Beis, Nitfas B'Sefer Derech Mitzisecha. Since then, it's been Nitfas also in the 2 years after this was printed the Tavkuf Samar Beis of the Alter Rebbe. And there you have another Nusach. There's a shinuyim between this one and that one. But upon him, in the Tavkuf Samar Beis, of the Sefer Tavkuf Samar Beis, he also brings the second marshal of the two Chachomim, which are Misvakrim. So Tzemach said in the Nusach that's in Derech Mitzvah, somehow I don't think he brings that second marshal. But here he does bring it. So Lefi Zeh, Ula Yesh Loima, it would seem that the two Mishalim are masim to the two Inyana that we're talking about. We asked two questions at the beginning. We asked, how is the Chiba of the Iris? And then we asked, how is the Chiba of the Iris with a Kli? And he explains first the Chiba of the Iris and the Kli, and then goes back at the end to the Chiba HaIris. But when he gets back to the Chiba HaIris, look at the last words. He says, Yishkenu Ze'im Zeh. He says, Yishkenu Ze'im Zeh. Yishkenu Ze'im Zeh is not mamish. Ze'im Zeh just means they're in peace with each other, like Makas Bara. It doesn't sound like there's a chibur. Also, if you look on page Reish Mem Daled, when he talks, when he finishes off the whole inyan over there, also like 5 lines from the top, the line begins Reish Lamed Vav. Amad Reish Mem Daled, the line begins Reish Lamed Vav. He says, Ve'ein zeh doime mamish lein Reish Shalom bim Reimav. It's not mamish the same thing. In other words, it comes out like this: the mashal of Eish and Mayim, the mashal of Eish Shalom, is masim for the chibur of Afochim in Eiris. The mashal of two Mechachomim Misvachim, which come to an absolute Shalom, sounds like that mashal is masim to the chibur of the Oir and the Kli. Because the chibur of the Oir and the Kli is much closer. It's not that they stay different. What's the lashon the Maimah uses that the Oir and the Kli come together? It's not just Yishkenu Ze'im Zeh. What's the lashon of the Maimah? More than once. He comes down, look at page Reish Mem Beis, he says, after the mashal of the two Chachomim, he finishes off, Yashpia beratzen, v'yo'ei v'yishtatef b'hakeli. He comes together, b'shutfus with the keli. They work together now. Bifrat. In Yeshiva they're learning Hashutfim, right? So, no? Babasa? In Hashutfim, so there's a famous tshuva from the Machne Ephraim that shutfus doesn't mean that each one has a chelik in something. In the say, you have a chotzer, so I have a chelik in the chotzer. It doesn't just mean stamach. It means everybody has a chelik in everything. It's a total bias on the whole thing. But he also has a total bias on the whole thing. That's an emes hashutfus. Emes hashutfus is a yichud. You're both in charge of the whole thing. So here yishtatif is a loshon of chibur mamish. It's not yishkenu zeim zeh. They like that would be like the shutfim after they made a mechitza. That Yishkenu Ze'im Zeh, there's a mechitza in between. Of course, Yishkenu Ze'im Zeh. We're not talking about Yishkenu Zeh. We're talking about Yishtatif Imakli. There's a chibur of Eiris and Kalim. So it seems those would be massive. The two Mishalim, this was going chibur Eiris, which is Yishkenu Ze'im Zeh, and the mashal of the Chachomim is Eiris and Kalim. What's that?
What's the necessity of the third mashal?
What third mashal?
On the side. seems very similar.
The Sorim is Eisha Shalom, that is the Moshel.
No,
The Sorim is the Eisha Shalom B'Mreimov. It says B'Mreimov, Kamoshel HaSorim is explaining what Eisha Shalom is. That's all one Inyan. You're just saying that the Sorim down here and the Sorim up there.
These Mishalim are just for how they're mechaber with each other, not with how they become batal or how they.
Oh, so the Hasbara, why the Eisha Shalom, why they are able to be mischaber together, or at least Yishkenu Zeh Zeh, Eisha Shalom is because the Ha'ara that's Misgala Aleim is Mevatel them Metzias. When you're standing in front of the king, so although you have a whole Metzias, but you stand in front of the king, you become this battle. When you become this battle, you there's no isnadness from the other guy because he's also in this battle. So you can stand together. There's no fighting. It's when you go away from the king, each one has his shit.
That's not the same as what causes the Eretz and Kalim to.
It's not well. So that's the thing. He's using the marshal of Eiseh Shalom to explain the inyan of Bittul, but then he takes it a step further by Eretz and Kalim. The Nakuda of the marshal of Eiseh Shalom is that the Gilui Naila is Mevatel the Metzias. They become this battle. That's one thing. By Eretz and Kalim, there's another ingredient which he talks about in Sivov, which has nothing to do with Shnei Sorim. There's another ingredient. There's two things. There's the Bittul of the Metzias, and the second ingredient is Notz Chilosa V'Seifim V'Seifim B'Chilosa. Why would an oil want to come down to a keli? Why would an oil want to come down to a keli? Is because of Notz Chilosa V'Seifim. And this is the in other words, the oil sees a mile in the kli. So let me just add on over here what the Rebbe talks about in the Maamar of Macha Chodesh. Are you familiar with that Maamar, Macha Chodesh? There's a Maamar Macha Chodesh Tavshin Chav Ches, where the Rebbe speaks brings down this whole shtickle from here, and there he says a few Isofis it comes out. When a neshama comes down, from there, by the way, is another heichacha, the Eretz and Kalim Neshama and Guf is the same thing. You'll soon see why. There the Rebbe says, Amar Inyan. Why is it that this is the system in Seder Shtalshlis? The Eretz want to come to the Keli because of the Ma'ila of the Kli? The Sibah for that system in the whole Seder Shtalshlis is because of the Neshama B'Guf. Since the Bria is everything is B'Shvil Yisrael, so the Sibah of everything is Yisrael. And by Yidden, the Neshama and Guf is that the Neshama wants to come to the Guf. The Neshama wants to come to the Guf. So why do you want to come to the Guf? Because the Guf has B'chiras HaAtzmos. So therefore the Neshama sees this Maila that has B'chiras HaAtzmos, which by the Neshama he doesn't have, Koponim Begilu he doesn't have. He feels it, and therefore he wants the Guf. And since you have such a setup by Neshama and Guf, from that comes about that the whole Seder Shtalshus works in the same way, that the Oiris want to come down to the Kelim. So it works the other way around. So Neshama Guf is a Sibah for Oiris and Kelim. And another point he adds on over there is, which we don't see clearly over here, why does the Neshama want to come down in the Guf? Because he wants to see the Mile of the Guf. So the Rebbe says in the Maamar that even before the Neshama comes down, is Me'er Ba'efesh Shel Makif to the Neshama, the Sheirish Haguf. And that's where he's margish the Sheirish Haguf, and that is what makes him want to come down to the Guf. That doesn't say clearly over here. It sounds like it, but it doesn't say it clearly. There it says, "It kodim yiridasa." The neshama is margish the Meiras Haguf, and therefore he wants to come down to the Guf. Was it? Once it's done by neshama Guf like that, that's a sibah that it works like that by Eretz and Kalim. What's that? So in the context of this Maamar, we say he's not talking so high in Atzmus, he's talking about in Ak. That Kalim are mushush in Atzmus Ak, and Eretz are mushush in Onia from Ha'oros Ak. Just to make things a little bit clearer, so a lot of people don't always get straight over here, the Shema the Mitzcheda Ak, maybe just a few minutes to talk about that. Yeah, and Shevat. Yeah, it's a little bit Kabbalistic, but it's Bichlal. What happened after Olam HaTohu? The Shrius HaKelim. So what happened? An explosion. We know the explosion, but what happened after that? And the Zeitzes fell down to the place which is going to be Olam Mizbeah. That's what it says usually. B'mokim, which is going to be Olam Mizbeah. There was no Olam Mizbeah yet, but they fell down to that mokim, whatever that means. But what happened after that? There's no continuation in Seder Ishtalshlus of Akudim, Lekudim, Akudim, Tohu, Shvira, and then it fell down.
Why not Brudim next? Why not Hatzal?
How'd you get to Brudim? Brudim is Tikkun.
First Yevshua was Maitzel one her, which was shaking the kingdom, and then Yevshua was Maitzel second her, that was not shaking the kingdom. So it's all says that that was shaking the kingdom.
Brudim is a continuation of Tohu, you say?
It's a second Hatzal. There's Hatzal, it's the spheres of Tahi, and then there's Hatzal, the spheres of Tikkun.
How did that happen?
Another Hatzal, same with the first Hatzal happened.
What's the system? I'm not asking how it happened. I'm not asking who's pressing the buttons. I want to know, how did it work? There was a Shviras HaKelim. That means after Tohu, there is no continuation, a normal continuation. What? All Olamis we know, we have Malchus of the higher Olam becomes Kesser to the next Olam, and so it continues. One Olam to the next. Here, it finished the Olam. There was a Shvira, right? So it was stuck. There's no continuation. What happened after? What? Well, how did that work? Where did it come from? Hmm? Almost. The Nitzaitzes fell down. So there's no continuation of Olamus after Tohu. It's broken. The system is broken. So there was a Halois man. We're not going to all the details. There was a Halois man from the Nitzaitzes. But where would this Halois man come from? Who's making a Halois man? So you have to differentiate between the Oiris and the Golomb of Tohu. This is Michoel good. You might come across it here, and other Hemsheirim talk about Tohu and Tikkun, which not everything is spelled out. The Oiris were nistalik, and the Golomb fell down. Right? So why do we call it Mises Hamalachim? The Zayin Malchoim de Tohu, it's called Vayimrach Vayomos. What happens when a person passes away? His guf is in a matzav of shvira, no use anymore, and the oiris, which is his neshama, went up. So the same thing. It's called Mises Hamalachim. What happened is the Golomb fell down, and the oiris were nistalik. But where were they nistalik to? Where did they go? The answer is they went back to Ak. And there was a Halois man in Ak, which was Ma'ora, a new yichud. A new yichud between, I don't know if it's going to get all the details, but it's a new yichud between Ab and Sag. And by yichud Ab and Sag came out a new Shema. This is called the Shema HaChodesh. The new Shema. And this new, why is it called new? Anything that's after the Shvira is called new. If it's from before the Shvira, it's old. So Atik Yamin is from before the Shvira, he's old. Shema is from after the Shvira, he's new. So the new Hamshacha that came out from Ak is called the Shema HaChodesh. This Shema comes from the level of Mitzcha Da'ak. We'll get to that in a second. And this Shema from Mitzcha Da'ak came down and was Nimshach and did a biru of all the problems that happened from Tohu. It fixed up a chronistic tikkun of all the nitzaitzes and all the kelim and whatever needs to be fixed up, and that set up the seder of the four olamas, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah. The most, should we say, the most adelest of the shivrei kelim, which could easily be fixed up, Shema fixed them up totally, and that's why Atzilus is called Olam HaTikun. It's Metukun. It's also from Tohu. It's also from the Shivrei Kelim of Tohu, but you won't notice that. You won't see it anything to do with Tohu because it's totally fixed up through the Shema HaChodesh. And with the Shema came new Oiris also. So in the Shema there's a mixture of Oiris of Tohu, which were Nistalik, and from the new Oir that came down from Ak.
Why is there a mixture?
Hmm?
Why is there a mixture? Why does it have the Oiris of Tohu?
Why what?
Why is it not just the Oiris of Tikkun?
I'll have to ask the boss. I have no idea.
Ah,
I'm talking about was state. I don't know. I'm just getting through the system, so it should be clear. So this oil came down, and the oiris of Shema are. It's Shema Ma de Tikkun. It's called Shema HaChodesh, which is Yetzer Mitzchadat, which is Shema de Tikkun. That's why you say every Friday afternoon, the Shema de Il Oirach Atzilus. Atzilus is Shema. It's Kulei Tikkun. It's Kulei Kodesh. La Yigur Chara. There's nothing bad in Tikkun. In Olam Atzilus, everything's good. But the Nitzosis, which couldn't be Nisbara Ad Kedei Kach, they fell down to Olam HaBriya. They were also partly Metuken, but not enough. The lesser ones fell down to Yetzirah, and the lowest ones fell down into this Olam, which is what you see, Olam Achi Shavur, all the broken Kalim, which Shema fixed up to a certain extent, but we have to finish off the job through Torah Mitzvahs and Tefillah. So we are being Mesaken. When we're Mesaken down here, we also are being Mesaken Yetzirah and Bria, and we mile everything back to Atzilus if we can reach up there. So that's the Shema HaChodesh. Settled? The Shema HaChodesh. Now, why does it go? What's the difference if it comes from?
Shema HaChodesh because it's a Shema before also? Or
There was all 4 Shemas beforehand. The Shaila is, this Shema came around again after the Shvira, so it's called Shema HaChodesh. I'm sorry, my hearing's not that good. You have to speak up. I pushed it.
He was asking if there's any ACs that make this not sound like just like a factor in.
Oh, I thought it was quite clear, no?
It was very clear on the chart.
Very clear the chart.
I'm making a chart. That's
What
No,
that
no, no.
actually means, in
we
terms
want to
that we
make-
can understand.
Okay, so let me give you an example to make that slightly more in Olam Hazeh. What would be an example of a person who is a Titzor from Olam HaNishba, from Olam HaToyu? All of us. Because our Nefesh Bahamis is from Toyu, so we're all Kelim Shvurim. Now we also have a Nefesh Lakis, which is from Shema, which is busy trying to be Mevara, the Shem Ban of the Nefesh Bahamis. We're trying to do that. But sometimes we get stuck and we don't know what to do. So we go to Shema HaChodesh. Who's that? We go to the Rebbe, and he's mayor. Just looks at you, or sends you a letter, or whatever it is, and he's mayor, and he tells you, this is how you do it, this is what you should do, and then everything should sort themselves out. It's a tikkun. You go to a Rebbe for a tikkun. Well, yeah, a Rebbe can be mayor. In fact, even just looking at a person is a big inyan. Should finish off with a short story. There was a Maisa with a Yid, a Gvir, came to, I've forgotten which Rebbe he came to. One of the, I think maybe I don't know which Rebbe, not one of our Rebbeim. And he said, he came in for Yechidus, and he wants to know if he can be counted as a chassid. So whichever Rebbe was, maybe it was the Heilig Rishon, I don't remember. He said, yes. But why? What's your reason for coming now? What do you want to? So he said, because he had a friend that came to him in a dream after he passed away and told him that he was very good. He went up there and he got a whole din in Shemayim, but all of a sudden he was schlepped up into Gan Eden. Everything was okay. It was mochalach. And they asked him why. He said, because this and this tzaddik, when a tzaddik passes away, he's able to take with him the neshamas with him. He's paid the neshamas. He takes them out of Gehenna. He takes them up. It's like an Eser Otzen. He takes neshamas with him. So he said, and I was taken with. He says, well, what shaykhus do you have with this tzaddik? He says, I actually don't have a shaykhus, but I was born from his bracha. That's my shaykhus. I never knew him, but since he says his mother, my mother was by him for a bracha, for a child. Therefore, I was born through his bracha, so I'm connected with him. So when he was taking the shamas out, I went with. So I'm saying just a slight connection with the tzaddik. Right? Then you have the Kuti Diburim, where the Rebbe, Fidik Rebbe says, Mori de Keverta. He says, what was the cause of the downfall, which is basically a shvira, of Adam Rishon? The downfall was he looked in the wrong places. Now, why was he looking over there? He wanted to be Mevara. He wanted to see what Tevara, whatever he wanted to look at over there. In Heicholis, where he shouldn't have looked. And instead of him being Mevara, he got schlepped down. And that was the Sibas Achet. And the Fidik Rebbe adds on one line, he says, you know why it schlepped him down? Because Adam Rishon wasn't a Rebbe. When a Rebbe looks at someone, he picks him up. That's Shema HaChodesh. He looks at the Birurim, sorts it out. Of course, you have to do work. The Birurim of Olam Atikon of Atzilus was, he fixed everything up, the Shema. But the Birurim of Biyah, he fixed them up to a certain extent and gave you the keiches that you can finish off the job. So that's like a Rebbe giving you an eitzah. This is what you should do. This is the tikkun for your inyan. Now it's up to you to do it. You have to be avoided with keich because Birurim have to be done milmata l'mayim. Now, just to make more complicated slightly, there's a difference between the mitzcha and the oizem chaytim peh. Oizem chaytim peh are considered in this context as pnimius ak, atzmius ak, whereas mitzcha is referred to as only ha'ora. It's explained that oizem chaytim peh, there's actually havolim, which he talks about in the Maamar, that come out. There's air comes out obviously of the breath and the nose, and even the ears, there's also a hevel that comes out. It says if you close your ear, you can hear a noise. That noise is the hevel trying to come out. As I stated. Now, the eyes also, it says a certain amount of hevel somehow comes out. So there's a naim of ak also, which I don't know if you mentioned over here. But usually, oizem chaytim peh. So these are all havolim. There's a hashpah of some sort. It's called a hevel because it's a inyan chitzoni, but it's still a hevel. Masha'inke mitzcha, the tzohov upanov of this great Talmud Chacham or tzaddik that shines through, although it's not a gilui of only oizem or only chaytim or only peh, it's a gilui of his whole etzem, but since it's going through the metzach, which is a bone, it blocks it, and therefore what comes out after is a ha'ara. So it has a maila that it's a gilui of etzem, a higher gilui, but the chisaron is it's only a ha'ara. In other words, it's toned down. It's gone through the etzem of the metzach. So that's what he's trying to say over here. If it's only coming from mitzchadak, it's a ha'ara. It's less, in a sense, it's more a ha'ara. It's more less mitzias than the giluim that come from oizem chaytim peh and einayim, which are more atzmistic. In other words, the oiris that are coming from Shema HaChodesh, from Mitzcha Da'ak, are more subdued. That's why it's more tikkun. It's purely scholarless in the oiris. It's not so tough. Masha'enke, the other things are more atzmiistic, and anyway, so what he's, in the context over here, wants to say that kelim come from the havolim of ak, they come from more atzmius of ak. Masha'enke and oiris only come from a ha'ora. Therefore, the oir is margish, the maila of the kli, even before he comes down, and therefore he wants to come down to the kli. This type of iskalalus he calls mitzad notz klas v'seifim. So just to go back to the nakuda, the oiris are mischaber together. He uses the lashon yishkenu zeh and zeh, which is a type of iskalalus which passes to the moshel of the shnei sorim in front of the king. They're not actually joining; they're just not arguing. Masha'enke, the chibur, the oiris kelim is a shtatfus. There's a shituf b'neihem, and that type of chibur is a greater chibur. Why? B'tzad notz chalasim b'seifon. The maila of kelim. What's notz chalasim b'seifon? The achdus that's in, and the iskalalus that's in tikkun, he says, and brings from the Michoel Rebbe, is even higher than the iskalalus that's in akudim. So akudim also is esa oiris and a kli echad. So it's kli echad, but the oiris themselves are separate oiris. Masha'enki in tikkun, the kelim are in such a way that each one is makabel from the other one. So just to give a gashmistic example for that, it was brought down in the Kovetz that in the olden days when a person used to have a headache, what would they do? Hakos's dam on the foot. What's up the foot with the cup? This is scholarless. In other words, what's called roish and soif is in tikkun. The soif has a maila which the roish doesn't have, and therefore the roish is makabel from the soif. So you need each other. It's not just you living together. Yishkenu zeh zeh. You need each other. You need him, and he needs you, and you need it. And it goes backwards and forwards. So that there's iskalalus b'li hashiyim tzarei yourself. That iskalalus is dafke in kelim, and that's even a higher iskalalus than akudim, and he's miyachas that all the way up to atzmus. So, okay, I think that's. The oiris seems like the two sorim.
And why does that exist?
What's that?
Why does that exist in Tikkun?
Why does what
What
exist?
causes that to exist in Tikkun?
Mitzad ha'isashon, mitzad ha'shema. The shema makes them be together. They're more subdued, so they can get together. But the hiskalolus is dafka mitzad ha'keli.
Is Sag always higher than Ab?
Huh?
Is Sag always higher than Ab?
No, Ab is higher.
So how come here Sag is higher?
Sag is we're talking about. So when he talks about the atzmius, he mentions Sag. Where does he say it's higher than Ab?
So the Shema, the A is Marcus Shesha, is Abda. But the Shesha,
Where are you reading from?
Yesh Vav, the end of Zion.
Okay. Who me begin Shem Ab Da'ag?
Yeah.
He's just saying where the Shema comes from.
Okay, and then
So
what
it
it says about the Habolim, it says from Shem Sag.
Right, but that's because the Shema goes through the mitzvah. So the mitzvah is blocks that only a ha'ara comes out.
So
Not
the
because
Ab is not the mitzvah. The
no, Ab is before inside.
But
Is it?
Sag is Atzmius also.
It's atzmius. It's not coming from the mitzvah. Sag is the
So
oizen.
Ab is more Atzmius than Sag, but they're both Atzmius.
Ab is inside his head before it came to the
And
mitzvah.
Sag is
And Sag is the oizen,
the Habolim.
the avolim of the
They're both
oizen.
Atzmius, but one is more Atzmius than the other.
I'm not sure what you're saying now.
You're saying Ab is
Ab
more
is higher than all of them.
Yeah,
Ab
but
is the first.
Right, but then we said that Sag is Etz, and then that's why it's...
Sag is atzmius in comparison to Ma.
Yeah, so it's they're both Atzmius, but Ab is more Atzmius than Sag. No?
Mistama, if you're able to reach up to Ab, yeah, Ab maybe will be like that. But we don't have from Ab. We have Shema that comes from Ab that goes through the mitzvah, so it's less.
So but Sag, you said, is Atzmius.
It's considered atzmius because it doesn't go through any blockages.
So